Peter Schiff Show.
All right. We are going to have a Peter Schiff Show exclusive, a surprise guest, Brian Seaman from a super PAC in Florida. Brian, are you with us?
I sure am. Thank you for having me on.
It's my pleasure, my pleasure. So I will let you tell the dastardly tale of what is happening with the Republican National Committee Festival.
Okay. Let me start from the beginning. We are trying to organize a festival down in Tampa, Florida for the 24th, 25th, and 26th called Paul Festival, and this will take place days before the RNC is scheduled to start. And so what happens is that the Republican National Committee, they have gone out, and 2 years prior to having this convention here, they already knew they were going to have it in Tampa. They went out and secured all the major venues in the area, and it's actually a common practice with these big political parties. I'm not sure if most people know that or not. But what they do is they sign contracts with all the big venues, and the concept there is to, allow them choices of the venues they want for events that they need, and of course, give them the option of approving or not approving events they don't think they want around their convention at the time. So back in February, we started the process of securing the Florida State Fairgrounds for our event, and what the Florida State Fairgrounds told us to do was to go to a website that the RNC has up, and we put in an application for approval. We did that right about the end of February, beginning of March, we put that in. Come May, the RNC told the fairgrounds that they can start negotiating with us, and the fairgrounds did start that negotiations with us so we could have the event. On June 1st, there was supposed to be an announcement of releases of events, and come June 1st, our event has not been released. We still have not been approved to use the fairgrounds from the RNC.
And this is not because the RNC has some other use that they had planned for it, is that right? I mean, because they have first dibs, right? They sort of staked the claim, so to speak. They got first dibs, but they said to you, we're not going to use it, go ahead, and now they're not releasing it. Is that right?
That's correct. That's exactly what's happening. And from our
do they think that you're Democrats? The same team. I mean, tell me what the reason. I mean, do they just consider Ron Paul to be the crazy uncle with his conspiracy theories and the Fed and gold standards? They just don't want him at the table, or what do you think's going on?
I think that has to be the case, because when you look at around the country and what the GOP has done to Ron Paul and his supporters, up in Maine and in other states, as far as not counting votes, as far as trying to change the rules in the middle of a convention to select delegates. When you look at it from that point of view, I think it's no doubt that the GOP does not want Ron Paul and his supporters part of this, which strikes all of us as odd. From my point of view, I've been a registered Republican for 16 years now. So they're kind of, I voted, and I hate to say this, but I voted for, George Bush back in the first election. Yeah, I know. I learned since then.
Standing indoors so the righteous lightning libertarian thunder gods don't send a bolt through your head. So good, just stay in, don't touch any water. But sorry, go on.
Exactly. But the point is, almost everybody on our organizational team is Republicans as well, and have been for a very long time. And so, yeah, this is a Republican event. It's not just Ron Paul who's invited. Obviously, we're going to invite Rand Paul. There's going to be some other congressmen and other Republicans out there that are on our list to extend invitations to once we, have the venue secured. So from our point of view, it does seem like we're not being approved because this is a Ron Paul event. They did already approve a location for Sarah Palin's event, whatever she's putting on. I haven't looked into the details, but obviously they released an event for her, a location for her. So this is obviously some picking and choosing. The RNC itself and the organization that handles this, which is called the Committee on Arrangements with the RNC, they're very vague. They're very one-worded answers, and what we get from them is, we have hundreds of applications to go through. We'll get to yours when we can, and until then, nobody's approved.
Right. Yeah, because they want a farmer's market there, and how on earth would they be able to differentiate that between Ron Paul? Also, feel free to give me a call. I do a live version of Baby Got Butt. I don't know if that's going to fit your venue, but so I'm going to try and sort of get into the Republicans' head, and this is not something I like to do on a regular basis because it does involve a fair amount of sand scrubbing and detox afterwards.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
But my guess would be, and tell me if this fits with your thinking, my guess would be that they don't consider there to be a lot of bleed over. Right, so what happens in all of these campaigns is that, they all jockeying for the front position and they all put each other down. right? And then the moment that somebody becomes like a clear contender, like Mitt Romney is now, everyone's like, love that guy. He's the best guy ever. I can't believe there were people who ever spoke wrongly of him. I had a personality disorder. I have an evil twin who speaks badly of this guy. But I don't think that there's going to be that same switch from the Ron Paul supporters. Like the Ron Paul supporters in general, and you know this much better than I do, but my impression is the Ron Paul supporters aren't going to go, oh, Ron Paul isn't in? Okay, I'll go with Mitt Romney. So I don't think that they feel that there is a bleed over effect, in which case it may not be as valuable to them. It may even be a negative compared to other things that they could throw in there. Does that make any sense to you?
It does, but I would think that they would have the feeling also that that Mitt Romney can't win without the Ron Paul supporters either. So to take on the assumption that there's going to be no bleed over or that we won't support Romney, it might be a good assumption. I can't speak for everybody in the movement.
But do you think that Romney can get Ron Paul supporters, given that he's dedicated to socialized medicine, at least from his home state? He's dedicated to increasing the military spend and is bellicose towards other nations. Do you think that he would have to make so many compromises to get the Ron Paul supporters that he would just alienate other less consistent, let's say, base within his party?
Once again, not speaking for everybody else out there that's a Ron Paul supporter, I'm not sure how to answer that question, and I hate to speculate. I do know that I do believe that if you're a political party and, they really think that they want Romney to win and beat out Obama, if the theory is, a Republican in office is better than a Democrat and Obama in office, then it seems to me they shouldn't speculate or make these assumptions. They should reach out to us and work with us, that they should come and say, hey, how do we make sure that you help us beat Obama in the general election? And they're not doing that. What they're doing is exactly what you said. Well, we don't believe there's going to be any bleed over. We think you Ron Paul supporters are going to go away if Romney gets the nomination, so we don't want you anyway. And that's
but wouldn't they sorry to interrupt, wouldn't they follow Ron Paul's lead on that? Do you think that he will endorse any other candidates?
I think they should follow Ron Paul's lead on a lot of stuff that they don't seem to follow his lead on, like, auditing the Federal Reserve and sound money, things like that. But he has endorsed other Republican candidates, and, of course, some of them have won their primaries in those states where he's endorsed them. And, Ron Paul has also raised money in state Republican parties for the party itself. So it's not like Ron Paul is out there trying to actively destroy the Republican Party, and neither are his supporters. We're out there trying to obviously change the Republican Party, bring it back to what its platform used to be, which was less government. So, I think, and Ron Paul's, of course, objective is to get people involved in the process. You can't affect change without being involved. And, you would think that the RNC would take some recognition to that and understand what we're doing.
Is there an element of, I mean, I hate to use the word censorship because that is a very powerful word, and I wouldn't want it confused with, legal incursions against freedom of speech. But there is a definite element of squelching, an element of its own party. This is not a competing party. This is not a neutral party. This is all under the same big tent. And they are basically not allowing a very successful, legitimate Republican candidate to hold a venue at the Republican National Convention. Is this not just frankly scandalous?
I believe it is. I truly do. And if we reverse this or rewind and go back to when George Bush was running, if he were able to bring in as many Democrats and as many independents over to the Republican Party as Ron Paul has, they would embrace him with open arms. But for some reason, because it's Ron Paul doing it and he's getting all these people to come in and become Republicans, they seem to reject it. And it's kind of the antithesis of what you would think a party would want. I mean, you'd think that they would want to take voters away from the Democrats.
And aren't Republicans continually and constantly complaining about bias in the liberal media and the fact that they don't get venues, that they don't get the opportunity to speak their plans, their calls to action, their platform? And now, aren't they doing exactly what they criticize the mainstream media for doing, which is to squelch and ignore in a very underhanded manner a legitimate expression of a political philosophy that is part of their political platform and part of their party?
I think that's exactly what they're doing, and what the problem is I don't think many of us completely understand why. And when I say many of us, I think the people inside the Ron Paul movement really do understand it. I think it's the Republican voters out there who just vote Republican because they've done it all their life and they don't care who's on the ballot. They just believe it's better than a Democrat. So I think there's now two factions of the Republican Party: those who are in the know and those who don't know. They just kind of blindly follow the Republican Party and its leadership. And I think the Republican Party is leaning on the blind followers and rejecting those that are in the know. And I don't know why that, because we're in the know, we scare them. I think that would be helpful to them. And, we are obviously building a coalition here of very strong, active political people. And you would think a party like the Republican Party would want that, especially if they really feel like they are competing with the Democrats.
Well, that's assuming that they're interested in principles, not power. I would agree with you. I mean, it sort of popped into my mind. This would be a perfect Daily Show bit, right? You call up the Republican convention. We want to use your fairground. Okay, are you Republicans? Yes. Are you consistent with our philosophy? Yes. Then no. Yes, if you're Republicans. No, if you're actually consistent with our political philosophy of smaller government. Then we can't conceivably allow that. And of course, this doesn't help break the stereotype that Republicans are old white guys who are scared of the young, particularly people who might have differently colored hairstyles. Thank you so much. You can go to paulfestival.org for more on this. Try and put the pressure on. And we will be back very shortly.
The Peter Schiff Show.